Chapter 20. In the hours after Pong leaped from the cliff at Nock's feet, he had clung to the cargo barge as it puttered slowly upriver, making stop after stop at every tiny village dock. Even if Pong had known how to swim, he had been too terrified to make a break for the shore in the daylight. He had nestled deeper into the nets hanging from the boat's hull and waited. Night fell. The barge glided past a tall tower that beamed blinking gold light into the dark, the first orb light Pong had seen in years. The river widened, and then he caught sight of what he thought were the rays of daybreak. Chitana. The city was even brighter than he remembered. This time, though, the sight of the lights filled him with terror, not wonder. He kept seeing Nock's furious face. Her words drummed in his brain. "You'll go straight to Banglad." They echoed the words that had haunted him for 4 years. Those who are born in darkness always return. Pong shuddered. The only thing that gave him any hope at all was touching the red braided bracelet. Surely this was just a little detour. He would find the sea and his freedom. He had to. Father Cham had wished it. Finally, the barge docked at Chitana to unload. Before anyone could see him, Pong swung himself under the planks of the pier. He spent the next few hours under the loading dock, dodging the fish blood and shark guts that dribbled down through the cracks and trying desperately to come up with a plan for hitching a ride on a boat heading south to the sea. He was starving. And worse, he was freezing. Even the warm, soupy water of the Chitana River would make a person cold if he was in it too long. Pong's fingers had shriveled like dried plums. He had to get out of the water. But by then, the river was full of swimmers. He heard boys' voices and the splashes of them diving in and popping back to the surface again. The shore teemed with their families. There were too many people for Pong to get out where he was. Teeth chattering, he crawled out from under the dock. Using the old tires and slimy ropes hanging off the shore, he pulled himself along, keeping in the shadows as much as he could, until he came to a narrow canal that branched off the main river. It was dark back there. Maybe if he went that way, he could climb out without being seen. But he was so weak, and the sides of the canal were so slippery. A wave of desperation washed over him. "Help, please," he called feebly, not caring who heard him now. "Over here," called a voice from above. "There's a rope there, near you. Grab on." Pong's fingers found the rope. He clung to it and looked up. A face wide and round like the moon gaped down at him. It was a face Pong never thought he would see again. It filled him with an indescribable joy. And then it reached a hand down and shoved him under the water. After the police officer left, Samkit hauled Pong up onto the dock beside him. It was an awkward maneuver with lots of grunting, and Pong nearly pulled Samkit over the side. Finally, Pong knelt on the slippery wood boards, heaving and shaking. Samkit draped a thin towel over his shoulders. "All right, I think Minut's gone," whispered Samkit, looking over his shoulder. "Man, that was close. Sorry about pushing you underwater so many times. I just didn't want him to see you. Thank goodness it was Minut and not—" Samkit turned back to Pong, startled all over again, as if he were fully realizing who Pong was for the first time. He placed his hands on the sides of Pong's chattering jaw and turned his face one way and then the other, as though he weren't quite convinced the face really belonged to his old friend. He let go and smiled the same wide smile that Pong remembered. "Man, when you popped up out of the water like that, I was sure you were a ghost." Pong tried to smile back at his rescuer, but his teeth were chattering so hard that it made his entire skull shake. So cold," he stammered. Samkit's smile faded as he eyed the fuzz of Pong's shaved head. "We've got to get you out of here. We can wrap this towel around your head and—" Whoa, I did not need to see that. Pong was nearly naked, wearing only the thin cotton underwear from the temple, which was almost transparent when it got wet. Okay, it's all right," said Samkit, averting his eyes as he wound the towel around Pong's head like a turban. "Just carry the crab trap over your—" You know, your stuff. And if anyone asks, we'll say your clothes floated away in the river. Pong followed after Samkit in a daze, holding the crab trap over his groin, trying to keep the crabs from pinching his underwear as they made their way through the busiest, brightest part of the city. Chitana had more canals than streets, and in a few months when monsoon season hit, it would have hardly any streets at all. Most people got around on boats that traveled the canal system, winding through the different neighborhoods, out to the main flow of the river and back into the city again. Those on foot squeezed onto the narrow wooden gangways that hung suspended over the water on either side, or the skinny alleys that crisscrossed the tracts of land between canals. Tall apartments rose overhead, their open windows overflowing with orchid plants, laundry, and chatting neighbors. People pressed against Pong on all sides, hurrying in both directions. He did his best to keep up with Samkit. At least having to hustle was helping Pong to warm up. That, and all the lights. After years of living in the quiet solitude of the mountain, Pong had forgotten what it was like to see the artificial light of the orbs, hear their buzz, and smell their metallic tang. And here in the city, there were thousands, no, millions of them. Even though the rains were weeks away, that many orbs made the air feel thick and pressurized, the way it does before a thunderstorm breaks. The boys dove into the rowdy throng of the entertainment district. Pong had never felt more exposed in his life, but there were so many people and so many distractions that nobody gave him a second look. Samkit pressed farther into the city's belly. Away from the club's thumping drumbeats, the alleys became more dingy, with fewer orbs. They crossed a bridge filled with people sitting on the ground, holding up signs and open palms. It took Pong a moment to realize they were begging. He stared, shocked at how many outstretched hands reached toward him. Beggars had come to Wat Seng, but never as many as this. Pong had never seen so many needy people gathered together. Samkit reached into his pocket and pulled out the handful of coins that Minit had given him. He dropped them into a woman's tin cup. "Come on," he whispered to Pong as he pulled him over the bridge. "And try not to look like such a country bumpkin, okay?" Samkit swerved suddenly to the left and led Pong down a dimly lit alley. Strands of tiny violet orbs swayed overhead, strung between the rickety buildings. "Where are we going?" asked Pong. "Shh," said Samkit. "Whatever I do, just go along with it." At the end of the alley, a faded cloth banner swung over an open doorway. The banner had the image of a fish printed on it and said, "Mark's Seafood Eats." The banner swished aside, and a short man with glasses emerged wearing a grumpy scowl. "It's about time you showed up, Samkit," he shouted. "But where's your haul? Don't tell me you're coming empty-handed and expecting to be paid again." "Calm down, Mark, calm down," said Samkit, nodding beside him. "My cousin's got a full crab trap, and we need full bellies to go with it." Samkit leaned in close to Mark and whispered something to him quickly. Mark glanced at Pong, and his eyebrows shot up. He nodded, then reformed the scowl. Yeah, I remember your cousin," he shouted. "All right, take the crabs to the kitchen, make a plate, and then go, and no refills. Got it?" "We got it," said Samkit. "Come on, cousin." Pong followed Samkit into the restaurant. He patted the towel tighter on his head and tried his best to shield his half-naked body from the customers. Mark followed them inside and said in a loud, grouchy voice, "Kids these days got no manners, showing up wet with no clothes expecting a meal." The diners in the packed restaurant had their heads bowed over their plates, spooning curried crab into their mouths or slurping fat, jiggly oysters out of their shells. Pong's mouth watered. He hoped that they were about to eat. Samkit ducked into a kitchen full of steam and smoke. The cooks leaning over crimson orb burners stopped their work for a minute to nod a hello to him and look curiously at Pong. "It's okay, he's cool," Samkit said to the cooks, who went back to their chopping and sizzling. "You can put the crabs there," he said, pointing to the corner and motioning for Pong to follow. They ducked under a curtained door into a green-tiled bathroom. "Come on, behind here," whispered Samkit. He slid a stack of fish sauce crates to the side, revealing a hidden passage. "But that guy Mark said we were supposed to make a plate and go," said Pong. "Nah, that was all just for show. You go in. I'll close this back up after." Pong stepped inside the dark passageway. He heard Samkit behind him, sliding the crates back into place. "We'll get you something to eat," said Samkit, "but first we gotta get you clothes. I'm tired of looking at your butt crack, okay?" Pong followed Samkit down the dark hall. Gradually, the darkness gave way to a lavender twinkling light. "My friend," said Samkit, slapping Pong on the shoulder, "welcome to the Mud House, the finest burned-out tenement building in the whole city."